Hello aspirants, welcome to PW OnlyIAS. I'm here Harpreet Singh with the daily analysis of the Hindu from 4th of November 2024. Let's begin with today's analysis. So what all topics we have taken for today's analysis? From the mains perspective in the Collegium system, the three-language formula, India-Iran ties, coastal zone regulation, a brief about the Iranian revolution. From the prelims perspective, KRail, Aditya L1, Maritime Education Hub, in Asian Buddhist Summit, World Cities Day. Please remember, this PG basically refers to the page number in which the article is mentioned in the international edition of the Hindu. Along with it, many students asked for writing the GS paper from which these articles would be important. So please understand, for every article I mentioned the GS subject in this site. Please note that very carefully. GS2 from the mains perspective, right? Okay. So these are the topics. So let's begin with today's analysis. Mains topics. First is a Collegium system. Now please remember, this topic has been repeatedly in the newspapers and we have covered it, I think, 2 to 3 times. But again, this is again present in the newspaper. So that means it becomes important for your prelims as well as your mains perspective. So when we are dealing with this, the Collegium system, let us understand, is not something that is mentioned in your constitution. It is something that came up by the repeated judgments of the Supreme Court. So first, this is related to, first of all, what? Appointment of the judges, right? And obviously the transfer of judges also. So when we see or study the appointment of the judges, we'll first see what the constitution says. And then we will study how this Collegium system came up. We'll also see something about NJAC and certain dimensions associated with that. So let's begin with this analysis. Okay, when I'm talking with respect to the appointment of judges, please remember, I'm talking about higher judiciary. Article 124 is related to the Supreme Court judges appointment and Article 217 with respect to the High Court. Now let us see what these articles basically say and what the constitutionally originally prescribed. According to Article 124, every judge of the Supreme Court shall be appointed by the President. First of all, important, appointed by the President, by the warrant under his hand and seal. That means by the signature and the seal of the President, the judges of the Supreme Court would be appointed after consultation. Now this becomes very important. After consultation, remember this word, we will again come to this. After consultation with such judges of the Supreme Court, of the High Court in the states as the President may deem necessary for the purpose, shall hold office until the age of 65. And provided that the case of appointment of judges other than the Chief Justice of India shall be consulted. Now let's see what it says. First of all, the Supreme Court judges are going to be appointed by the President of India under his hand and seal, right? Other than the Chief Justice of India, when the other judges are being appointed, along with the consultations that are basically made, the Chief Justice is also consulted, right? So what we see over here, consultation of the judges of the Supreme Court and the High Court in the states as the President may deem necessary for the purpose, and this is the appointment case. Now, the judges of the Supreme Court will hold office till the age of 65. Now, please understand, it's a very simple thing that the judges of the Supreme Court, including the CJI, would be appointed by the President of India. This is what the Constitution said. Now, something what is now is very different from what is mentioned in the Constitution. Similarly, with respect to Article 217 also, we see that the judges of the High Court shall be appointed by the President under a warrant under his hand and seal after consultation with the Chief Justice of India, the Governor of the state concerned, and in the case of appointment of the judges other than the Chief Justice of that High Court, the Chief Justice of the High Court shall hold office and an additional acting judge provided under Article 224 in other cases until the attains the age of 62. Now this has, earlier it was 60, now the 62 is the age of retirement for the judges of the High Court. Now what happens again in this case? The judges of the High Court are appointed by the President under his hand and seal, where the Chief Justice of India is consulted. Again, the word consultation is here, please see. Consultation is here. The Governor of the state is consulted. Now, even for that matter, if the judges other than the Chief Justice of the High Court is being appointed, the Chief Justice of the High Court will be consulted for the appointment of the judges to that High Court. So similarly, we see this is a very simple mechanism in which the appointment is basically stated over here. Now, what happened with time is a concept of Collegium system came up. Now let us see that. Initially, this is what Constitution provides. Now, presently, if someone asks me what is Collegium system, this is the Collegium system. But before we come to this, let us understand how the system evolved. First, Collegium system, let us see in brief before we begin. Collegium system is a mechanism that is evolved by the Honorable Supreme Court via its various judgments with respect to the appointment of the judges of the Supreme Court and High Court and the transfer of the judges. So that means what was prescribed by the Constitution per se has been changed and altered by the Honorable Supreme Court. How it has been altered, please understand. Remember, the Supreme Court is the final interpreter of the Constitution, right? So what happened is, when in this particular statements, we see the word consultation. Again, we see the word consultation. The problem that arose is whether this word consultation when comes, or that is the advice that the president has to consult from the, let us say, the Chief Justice or other judges, is that consultation binding on the president or not? Or simply the president is taking advice from the Chief Justice or the persons who have been mentioned over here. So the question arose on the topic of consultation, and because now Supreme Court is a final interpreter of what the consultation word is, that is why we realize the mechanism of appointment of judges has completely changed. Now see, we will see the evolution. Debates over the Collegium system. Again, the Collegium system basically refers to the appointment of the judges of the higher judiciary, that is the High Court and the Supreme Court, where this mechanism has been evolved by the various judgments that have been given by the Supreme Court. Now let's see how it evolved. Then we'll again come back to this slide. First judges case, 1981, SP Gupta versus Union of India. Here the Supreme Court held that consultation mentioned in Article 124 that we have seen just now means effective consultation and not concurrence of the Chief Justice of India. That means when the Chief Justice is giving advice to the President that this person should be appointed, the President may or may not agree. That means the executive, that is the government, had an upper hand with respect to the appointment of the judges. Now, the judiciary was just recommending, okay, this person should be appointed. That consultation may or may not be binding. So that means it gave primacy to the executive over the judiciary. That means the government basically got an upper hand with respect to who is going to be appointed as a judge of the Supreme Court or the High Court. Now, this was according to what even the Constitution prescribes. So there is no problem in that. But the issue, now let's see how the things changed. Second judge's case, as it is known as in 1993, the official name of this is Supreme Court Advocate on Record Association versus Union of India, 1993. This is also known as second judge's case. In this case, what happened? The word consultation really meant concurrence. Concurrence means that you agree to what the Chief Justice over there is saying. Now what happened? That means if the Chief Justice says that this has to be appointed, this judge has to be appointed, the President has to appoint that. That means in this case, the judiciary got an upper hand with respect to the appointment of the judges, not the executive. So this was a complete reversal of the first judge's case. Now, over here, because over here now, who's going to play the important role with respect to appointment of the judges? It is the court, the Supreme Court. That is why introduction of the Collegium system took place from the second judge's case from 1993 onwards, where the Chief Justice is required to consult with two of his senior most colleagues before tendering such advice, and the advice is binding on the President. Remember, over here, the second judges interpreted the word consultation as binding. Over here, it was not binding. That means executive have an upper hand. Over here, the judiciary has an upper hand with respect to the appointment of the judges, and for that matter, transfer also. The Collegium system over here was the Chief Justice and two of his senior most judges of the Supreme Court, who would be advising the President with respect to which advice is binding for that matter, with respect to who has to be appointed to the Supreme Court or the High Court, or for that matter, who has to be transferred. Clear? Now, next case came third judge's case, which is the President's reference, Article 143, where President can basically ask for some advice from the Supreme Court. Now see what happened in that case. The court's opinion on the appointment and the transfer of judges through consultation of plurality judges. Now please understand what happened is earlier we had the Chief Justice and two other senior most judges who formed the Collegium. Now the Collegium was expanded in this judgment where the Chief Justice and four senior most judges would form the Collegium. See, the Supreme Court expanded the Collegium to 5-member body. That means the CGI and 4 of his senior most colleagues. Did you see this? How the Collegium system has evolved. Before I go on to this case, let us move back to this. Now see what happens. If you see here, present system with respect to appointment. Now see, if the judges have to be appointment to the Supreme Court, let us say the appointment of the Supreme Court judge has to be made, what will happen? At present, the 4 senior most judges of the Supreme Court plus the CGI, they will be tendering their advice to who? To the President of India. That advice would be binding on them. Similarly, appointment of the judge of the High Court, this is after the 3rd judge's case. Please understand, this is the present scenario after 3rd judge's case, right? This was with respect to the Supreme Court. With respect to the High Court, the 2 senior most judges plus CGI. So remember that for the appointment of the judge of a Supreme Court, the scenario was changed, whereas the Collegium was expanded for the appointment of judges of the Supreme Court. But for the High Court, it remained the same as in the 2nd judge's case, where the CGI plus the 2 senior most judges would be basically rendering their advice to the President of India. Transfer of the High Court judges, the 4 senior most judges of the Supreme Court, along with the judges of the 2 High Court, plus obviously the CGI, would be there, who would be involved in the transfer of judges of the High Court. Now, this is an outcome of the 3rd judge's case. And the Collegium, what does it mean? A mechanism, or that is a body of the judges which are basically involved in the appointment of the judges and even the transfer of the judges of the High Court. So it is a mechanism through which judges are appointed, and the advice rendered by the Collegium is binding on the President. Clear? So let's move ahead. Now we have studied till the 3rd judge's case. Now please understand, 4th judge's case is something that the government of India basically passed a constitutional amendment in order they wanted to change this Collegium system, because it was seen as very opaque and non-transparent. So what happened is, we'll see what is NJAC. In this case, NJAC Commission Act was basically debated over here, where a 5-judge constitutional bench declared is unconstitutional and nullified on the grounds of threat to judicial appointment. So that means, we'll see now NJAC. In the 5th judge's case, when the government basically tried to bring out with a constitutional amendment in order to reform the Collegium system, because it is a system that is evolved by the Supreme Court itself. So it excludes the executive from the appointment of the judges. So they through the NJAC, National Judicial Appointment Commission Act, the government wanted that the court, the judiciary as well as the executive should play a role in the appointment of the judges. But that was declared unconstitutional by the Supreme Court on the ground of as a threat to the institution of judiciary and the judicial appointment. Now let us see what is NJAC. See, National Judicial Appointment Commission. NJAC was a proposed constitutional body in India. It was a proposed constitutional body, and constitutional amendment had already been basically amendment had taken place, which was declared unconstitutional, aimed at reforming the process of judicial appointment. It sought to replace the Collegium system with which vested power to appoint judges in the hands of the senior judges. Now, this NJAC was basically aimed at changing the Collegium system. So please see, NJAC proposal, the constitutional amendment, NJAC was proposed through the 99th Constitutional Amendment Act of 2014, which sought to amend the Article 124 and 217 of the Constitution. Now, what the composition of the NJAC was, please see. NJAC was designed to be a 6-member body consisting of the Chief Justice of India, 2 senior most judges of the Supreme Court, Union Minister of Law and Justice, and 2 eminent persons nominated by a committee consisting of the CGI, Prime Minister, and the Leader of Opposition. Now, please understand how it is working. 6-member bodies there, right? In which you have the CGI, you have the 2 senior most judges of what? Supreme Court. Then you have the Union Minister of Law. And please understand, there are 2 eminent people. Now, these 2 eminent people were appointed by a committee which consisted of the CGI, the Prime Minister of India, and the Leader of Opposition. What it was basically aiming at over here was that 3 members would be from the side of the judiciary, 1 minister, and 2 members appointed by a committee consisting of these. Now, this is basically removing the monopoly of the Supreme Court with respect to the Collegium system, where the judges have a complete control over the appointment of the judges. That means the executive is basically coming or getting involved, which the Supreme Court perceived as a threat to the constitutional, or let us say the judicial autonomy with respect to its working. So what happened? The functions of NJAC was, it was tasked to recommend the persons for the appointment of the Chief Justice of India, judges of the Supreme Court, Chief Justice of the High Court, and judges and transfer. So that means whatever recommendation would have come here then would go to the president, and the president will appoint it, because it is based on the consensus of the judiciary also and the executive. But the Supreme Court declared it as unconstitutional, which we saw over here in 2015, which I have mentioned over here. Clear? Let's move ahead. Now, please understand what are the reforms that should be done. Please, there is a reforming the MOP. Now, please understand, Memorandum of Procedure basically means that there's a discussion that is going on between the judiciary and the executive, where how they should come to a common proposal where the executive can also be involved and judiciary should also be involved in, let us say, soothing the process of the appointment of the judges. So reforming the MOP and coming to a conclusion is very important. Increasing diversity, adequate representation of judicial appointments should be made through increasing diversity, including large, because there are certain set of people who, through the legacies of, let us say, having their ancestors from, let us say, judicial background and judges, they are generally have a greater probability of being appointed. That is why we need more diversity also with respect to the appointment. Increasing transparency is important, because we see that the Supreme Court itself is giving the recommendation who should be appointed. Currently, we know what is the status of the Collegium system, right? So expanding the eligibility criteria, that means along with the criteria envisaged by the Constitution, determination of merit and suitability of the candidate should all be there, and there should be an open invitation of the eligible candidates, so that there is transparency there. Next, follow the Law Commission recommendation, equal role of judiciary and executive. This is what NJAC was trying to do, but Supreme Court thought that it is going against the, like a threat to the judicial appointment. So it was basically shut down. So the Law Commission says that the executive as well as the judiciary have an equal role with respect to the appointment. Increase the retirement age, so that, again, that will have a benefit, because out of the, let us say, the judges of the Supreme Court retire at 65 and judges of the High Court retire at 62. So they can increase it, because we know that out of the experience that they have gained, if they are fit, they can still continue. So what it's saying, retirement age of the judges of the High Court can be increased to 65 and the judges of the Supreme Court can be increased to 68. This is also way forward, because there is already burden of cases that are there. Appointment of the appointment sources for the Supreme Court judges, as per at Article 124(3), it contemplates appointment of the judges of the Supreme Court from 3 sources. Under-representation of distinguished jurists, limited appointment from the bar. Now, please understand that we have to make sure that when the judges are being appointed, these are certain recommendations being made where wider representation again needs to be there. That is what even the Law Commission is saying, that if the diversity with respect to the representation is not there, the recommendation is not there, then what will happen is that this appointment mechanism will become more and more opaque. And that is basically a threat to the concept of checks and balances that is there, a core of the Constitution of India. Now, recommendation for the merit-based appointment, as we have at the district level where you pass the examination and get appointed. So that is also one of the recommendation that is made. Expeditious filling, that means we need the vacancies that are there High courts are basically working at 60 to 70% of the strength. So that needs to be filled because there is tussle between the judiciary and the executive. That is what is creating the problem of fulfilling of the vacancies that are present there. Needs for permanent independent body, as we saw NJAC, somewhat similar body can be there. Similarly, safeguard for judicial independence also, that has to be there, autonomy. So a mixed solution has to be there where role of executive and judiciary is also there. And both are happy, and so that the judiciary or the judicial judgments giving should not suffer, because justice delayed is justice denied. Okay, let's move ahead. I hope you understood that topic. Next is GS from topic number 2, 3-language formula, page 2, GS topic 1 and GS topic from paper 2 and paper 1. It's important. 3-language formula. See, basically, please understand what was it. This was envisaged by the Kothari Commission, right? Kothari Commission said that 3-language policy currently ineffective, envisioned by the Kothari Commission. Proposal for language introduction, it proposed introducing Hindi in non-Hindi states and a non-Hindi language in the Hindi-speaking states. We will see the correct, what was the formula. This is just an overview. The implementation issues were most non-Hindi states adopted Hindi, while Hindi-speaking states neglected the non-Hindi education. Now, please understand, right now we saw this aspect, but what the formula was, that is very important to understand. See, 3-language formula said that there has to be first language where it will be the mother tongue or the regional language. For example, if you are in particular place, you have your own mother tongue or regional language, you learn that out of, because it is your mother tongue. Second language, someone that we should learn, it was expected, is Hindi-speaking states. In the Hindi-speaking states, it will be the other modern Indian languages or English. In non-Hindi speaking states, it will be Hindi or English, right? Third language, in the Hindi speaking states, it will be English or a modern Indian language. In non-Hindi speaking, it will be English or the modern. So that means we saw that 3 languages were basically being introduced over here, where we see that, let us say, other than the original language, you are learning the other languages also. Let us say Hindi. For that, for example, let us say if we are in North India, you're learning your mother tongue, you're learning English, and let us say one of the southern languages also, southern Indian languages. Now, what happened till now, it was fine. The problem that arose was, please understand, the problem that arose was people started thinking that in the Dravidian states that language, Hindi language is being imposed on them. Now, this is very often misinterpreted. 3-language formula was a means through which we basically tried to increase, let us say, or reduce the differences between the various people or following, or let us say, having their own different languages, so that at least a commonality is there where you can communicate in a common language, and obviously increasing the, let us say, unity and integrity among the people. Now, it was interpreted from a very negative perspective that there is imposition of one language of the north to the south and a southern language to the north. It is a means, basically was an aim where you could basically communicate with each other from a better mechanism, and obviously respect the cultural integrity and the diversity of India. Now, if you see that it is a threat, no, it is not a threat, for a reason, because various constitutions are already guarding you. And also, I'll give you the official stand of the government of India, which has been stated. See here. Article 29 already gives the Constitution of India protects the interest of the minorities with respect to, it is the religious and the linguistic minorities. So already the linguistic minorities' interests are already protected. Article 343, it is about the official language of the Union of India. According to this, Hindi or Devanagari script should follow the international form of numericals. This article also states that English will continue to be the official language for 15 years, though it was continued even after that. Article 346 about the official language of the communication between the states and the union. We've already studied that. Article 347 gives the president the power to recognize any language as the official language of a given state, providing the president is satisfied the substantial proportion of the state desires that the language be recognized as such. And that means states can have various types of official languages, and if the president deems fit that substantial people want it. Similarly, you also have Article 350 facilitates instruction in the mother tongue at the primary stage. Article 350b provides for the establishment of special officer for linguistic minorities. Article 351 gives the power to the Union of Government to issue directives for the development of Hindi language. 8th schedule already has 22 languages as scheduled languages which are recognized. So we should not see from the perspective that it is being imposed on some people. No, it is basically respecting the unity and integrity and diversity of India. Now comes the aspect which is being debated, that the government is imposing Hindi language. No, that is not correct. Reason is, see here. Under national education policy also, 3 language formula is mentioned. But the Government of India, Ministry of Education's official stand is, will continue to be implemented with greater flexibility. No language will be imposed on any state. So please remember that 3 language formula is basically aimed at increasing or the understanding of the beautiful languages that we have across India. It doesn't aim to subjugate any other language. No. That is why this is the official stand of Government of India, where they say that 3 language formula, where basically you can learn various languages of the various states, is going to continue, but there will be no imposition of any language on any state. This is the official stand that you should know. Okay, let's move ahead. Iran and India ties. Please understand this is an editorial, but I realized something that it basically did not mention a lot of details over here. So what I've done is I have taken this aspect also and written various other dimensions also. What it basically saying is, see, in Kazan declaration basically happened out of the BRICS summit that took place recently. So in those sidelines, India and Iran also basically had an interaction. Clear? So from the perspective of that, it says that it is basically a ground for India and Iran relations that is being studied over here. So if you want to study Indian and Iran relations, it becomes important because currently Iran is again in the hotspot with Israel. So we need to know that we have to balance the relationships also with Iran, also Israel, also both are right now enemy nations, right? From that perspective, we need to understand our relationships with Iran. I'm going to tell you how we are related, and so various dimensions over here. Please note that. See, if we see, there's a chart for your later on when you will be downloading the PDF. I have given a summary of how the relationships have evolved in the Middle East. When you download it, you can see. Let us first continue from the perspective of how the relationships are. That is for your self-study that I've put. You can download the PDF from my Telegram account, which is mentioned on the last page of the PPT PDF, and download it and read it. Now let's see the relationships. Historical relationships. Iran and India share a millennia-long history of interactions. Contemporary relations draw a strength upon the historical and civilizational ties and continues to mark by high-level exchanges, commercial connectivity and cooperation and cultural ties. Relations back to the ancient time of the Indus Valley civilization and trade between the coast of the southern Iran through the Persian Gulf and the Arabian Sea. So it is from the time of the Indus Valley civilization that the relationships between Iran, that means what was Persia, even before Persia was basically officially we call as, even before that we had relationships with Iran. So it is not a new set of cultural exchanges or the ties that we have, it is very old relationships, right? From the aspect of the political relationship, please understand, India and Iran signed the Friendship Treaty on March 15, 1950. So we have a friendship treaty since 1950, such very old relations. Both have signed the Tehran Declaration in April 2001 and the New Delhi Declaration 2003. And the two documents identified areas of cooperation and the vision that India and Iran basically aim at. So these are declarations in their respective countries which are basically aiming at increasing the cooperation, trade, and also along with this dimensions of support that can be there from each other's perspective. In May 2016, Civilizational Connect and Contemporary Context was issued and 12 Memorandum of Understanding and Agreements were signed. A trilateral agreement on trade, transport and transit between India, Iran and Afghanistan was also signed in 2016. Right now, in February 2018, a joint statement towards prosperity through greater connectivity was again emphasized. So that means we know that Iran is a very important country from the perspective of our connectivity to the Middle Eastern countries from the aspect of even trade relations. So Iran is an important partner of India. Indian Prime Minister and the Iranian Prime Minister met for the first time on the sidelines of SCO Heads of State Summit in Samarkand, Uzbekistan in 2022. That is with respect to Prime Minister Modi visiting there. And obviously there were bilateral cooperations. The two leaders also met on the sidelines of BRICS August 2023 and again in 2024. Right? There have been meetings between Iran and India. The two countries have several bilateral mechanisms, joint committees, security consultation, foreign office consultation, national security advisors consultation. There are a lot of groups and mechanisms through which there is, let us say, back channel interactions between both the countries taking place. So we see from the political aspect, Both are actively involved in interacting with each other. Though we know there are sanctions by United States, but still, for our interest, we have a close connect with Iran. If we move ahead, trade relations, we see that India and Iran are important trade partners among India being among the Iran's five largest trade partners. Among the top five, India is one of them. Major Indian exports to Iran includes rice, tea, sugar, pharmaceuticals, man-made staples, fiber, electrical machinery, and artificial jewelry. Major Indian imports from Iran consist of dry fruits, inorganic, organic chemicals, and the glassware. So these are the basic trade relations. If we move ahead from the cultural cooperation and people-to-people exchange, we already know we have civilizational links in the time of the Indus Valley civilization. We see this Indian Cultural Center was established in 2013 and renamed as Swami Vivekanand Cultural Center in 2018. That means one center being there basically aims at showing the close connect that India has with Iran. This being in Iran. India recently decided to include Farsi as one of the 9 classical languages under the new educational policy. We'll be seeing this, right? Major tourist destinations in India and Iran continue to attract tourists from all the ages from both the countries, right? So these are again very, very important dimension. Next, we see energy security. Iran ranks second globally in terms of the gas reserves. So we aiming at, let us say, moving towards, let us say, even having an energy security and energy mix. Energy mix needs not dependent on at least one source, but multiple sources where Iran can play a very important role. Right now, we know that there is a lot of disputes that are going on between the Western world and Iran. So that means we have reduced those imports from Iran. But it is a very important partner from the perspective of our energy security also. So that is why it's important. Economic ties, again, bilateral trade was 2.5 billion in 2022, reflecting an increase of 48% from 2021. Indian exports, we have already studied this and exports that are there. And over here, Iran included India in the list of countries whose citizens do not require a visa to travel. Now, this is something very important. Significance of Iran for India as a traditional partner. It has been a partner since from the time of Indus Valley civilization, so there is an important bond between them. Oil supplier, though it has decreased over the time because of the sanctions that are there, though India follows its own independent policy of strategic autonomy, still for the energy security purpose, it is important. Shared common concern on terrorism. Then again, we have the Chabhar port, which is important for our India's connect with the Central Asian world. So we have seen this. Okay, so now let's move on to the topic number 4, which is GS important from the GS2 perspective and page number 10. Though over here, what is mentioned is that on the new coastal zone plan for Kerala, where basically certain measures have been diluted with respect to the state of Kerala so that infrastructural building can take place. That is fine. We will see the analysis also as a new plans basically come up. But what is important for us over here is understanding the coastal zone regulation that is there. That is important from the perspective of the prelims as well as the mains. So let's see. Coastal regulation zones, right? The coastal stretches of seas, bay, estuaries, creeks and rivers, backwaters were declared as CRZs under the Coastal Zone Notification of 1991. Please understand, seas, bays, estuaries, creeks, rivers, backwaters along the coast, along the coastal regions have been declared as under CRZ. So they come under various zones, you'll be seeing them. CRZs have been classified into 4 zones for the purpose of regulation. This is the 1991 classification. See here. CRZ1, that is a CRZ zone 1. It includes ecologically sensitive areas where no construction is allowed except activities for atomic power plants and defense, because that is something you need to have the plants close to the coast, because again, from the perspective of security also, from the perspective of water supply also, and let us say in order to prevent damage to the mainstream population also. So those are generally close to the coastal regions. So we see these are ecologically sensitive areas. The construction is not like except for the above mentioned reasons. CRZ2 includes designated urban areas that are substantially built up. Construction activities are allowed on the landward sides only. On the outskirts region, certain construction activities are involved where certain aspects of urban areas can be there. CRZ3 includes relatively undisturbed areas, mainly the rural areas. So no new construction of building is allowed in the zone except repairing of the existing ones. However, construction of dwelling units in the plot lying between 200 to 500 meters of the high tide line is allowed. We will be seeing what is the meaning of high tide line and low tide line. We'll see that. Meanwhile, see. So that means mainly this is mainly marked by the rural region, right? CRZ4 includes the water areas covered between the low tide line and the 12 nautical miles seaward. Now, the repeatedly high tide and low tide region is coming, so please understand. High tide line means the line of the land up to which the highest water line reaches during a spring tide, right? What is spring tide? The position of both the sun and the moon in relation to earth is direct bearing on the tide height. So please understand, in this case, when the sun, moon, and the earth are in straight line, the height of the tide will be the highest. That means the highest of the highest tide is the spring tide. So that means the high tide line is 1, which means the line of the land on which the highest water line reaches during the spring tide. So at what level during a spring tide that the water would reach, that is the high tide line, so highest line. Low tide line, similarly, it meant the line of the land up to which the lowest water line reaches during the spring tide. So that means the lowest level when it is, that is a low tide line. So it is extreme points that we're talking about. So when we come back over here, we realize that when we read over here, it includes the water areas covered between the low tide line and the 12 nautical miles towards the seaward side. So these are certain official, what we say as technical terms that are there, but brief idea should be there. Now, these are the 4 zones that we see over here. Then we realize that in CRZ notification 2018, based on the Sailesh Nayak committee, certain changes were made, right? See, floor space index norms were basically further diluted. That means, see, the floor space index was frozen as per the 1991 development control regulation levels. CRZ 2018 notification has decided to defreeze the same and permits FCI for construction projects to enable development of the area. So that means, with respect to the developmental activities, certain dilutions have been made by the 2018 notification. That means more construction activities can take place. New categories for densely populated rural regions, that is CRZ3. You remember, for CRZ3 was with respect to rural regions, where it mentioned that no new construction of buildings would be allowed except for the repairing work. Now again diluted. 2 separate categories have been stipulated. CRZ3A, these are densely populated rural areas with a population density of 2161 per square kilometers. Now please understand, such areas will have no development zones of 50 meters from the high tide against the 200 meters as notified in 2011. So that means we realize that there have been dilution with respect to certain dimensions that are there, and certain restrictions have been made. So basically this is being done so that the economic activities do not hinder. Along with it, let us say some balance with respect to economic development and environmental development are basically carried on together. If we move at CRZ 3B, rural areas with a population density of this much, such areas shall continue to have no development zone of 200 meters. So that means this region where certain dilutions have been made so that construction activities can take place. You don't have to go into very technical dimensions I've mentioned over here just because these certain notifications that were there. Brief idea should be there, and that is what is required from you. Tourism and tourism infrastructure in coastal areas will be allowed with respect to, let us say, tourist blocks, changing rooms, drinking water facilities. These are allowed in the beaches. CRZ clearance is streamlined. So that means certain clearances that have to be made with respect to construction activities are streamlined, how the procedure has to be carried on and how things can basically take place. No development zone of 20 meters for the islands. So that means, again, we see that there are dilutions taking place with respect to the island development also. So overall, if you see, the changes that have been made are basically for the purpose so that construction activities which are not allowed earlier on those sensitive regions are now diluted. That is why similarly for Kerala also, the plan that has come up basically dilutes these aspects so that construction activities in the coastal regions along Kerala can take place. So that is what is a brief idea that you should be knowing. Let's move ahead. Iranian Revolution. Now please see, this was page number 15, GS1. Let us see what Iranian Revolution basically studies or sees. See, Iranian Revolution or the Islamic Revolution. Clear? See, why did the Iranian Revolution start? The Iranian Revolution, you need to understand that we will see a brief background. When the Shah was a king of Iran, he was one of those who had a support of the United States when he took over, right? Even his father also. Now, he modernized Iran to a very great extent. That means all the urban infrastructure was there, the way you want to dress, Western wear, Western movies, everything used to be there. Now, the king's such liberal policies in Iran was favoring the United States, because Iran at that time was a major ally of United States. It was supplying them with oil. Again, US was basically culturally influencing Iran. And what happened because of that is Iran and US developed very close relationships. Now, what happened is, because when we see such liberal policies being there with respect to, let us say, lesser influence of religion, what happens? The people who were, let us say, religious in nature or a little fundamentalist in nature, they saw these steps by the Shah, that means the king of Iran, as going against the Islamic principles. When they saw it against the Islamic principle, they started a revolt that took place, which started, we'll see the timeline also, slowly it started, and basically it erupted to a great extent. And then what happened? Then Shah had to basically run away from Iran, and then complete change of the nature of Iran took place. And as the Shah left, what ally that US had in Iran, that thing ended completely, and we saw that how Iran and United States basically became the enemies. Now see, the Iranian Revolution began with many Iranian citizens within Iran were very dissatisfied with the rulership of the Iranian king Mohammad Reza Shah Pahlavi. He replaced his father in the year 1941 to the throne. So he came to throne in 1941. Now see, how and when did the Iranian Revolution officially start? It officially started in 1900 just a minute. It officially started in 1978 within the first major demonstration to overthrow the Shah. So that means we realize it started in 1978, but again we see in December 1979 the revolution finally concluded with Shah removed as a ruler of Iran, and approval of the neo-theocratic. Theocracy basically means rule by the people, religious people, who basically see religion as a basic premise of philosophy for the rule of a country, by the Ayatollah Khomeini took place, and Shah was removed from Iran. He basically ran away. So what do we see over here? We see that people were very unhappy as perceived, particularly the radical or the people who were religious in nature. They thought that this westernization or over-westernization of Iran was basically against the Islamic principles, right? So, and remember, Shah Pahlavi was a very close friend of the United States. Iranian Revolution, please, is considered the third greatest revolution in the history. On February 9, 1917, millions of Iranis came to the streets of Tehran to welcome the return of the religious leader Ayatollah. He helped overthrow the much-hated regime of the Shah. It was one of the largest demonstrations in human history, and we realized that this was again threatened the very existence of the Shah Pahlavi, who was a king, because such large demonstrations and protests started taking place against the Shah, because they thought this is against the Islamic principles and you are over-westernizing the country. That is why we saw that such revolution was taking place. Again, there are various other dimensions, we'll see that. See what happened. Why did the people hate Shah so much? That is again coming up. Shah relied on manipulation and fear to lead the people. He had a very secret police, which is known as Sevek, spy on people and report back to Shah. So please remember, like somewhat Hitler had, he also had a secret police where he saw that if somebody was revolting against him, or let us say doing something which was against his philosophy, the secret police was basically pick them up and shoot them or kill them. Now this was against the very spirit of the Iranian culture that had been there. So that means we realize that over here, what happened is that people started seeing this ruler as someone who would completely banish the right to freedom or right to speech, right? So what happened? Then we basically see he closely identified himself with the West, that is United States, which was clashing with the Iranian Muslim tradition. The Shah really made attempts to modernize Iran in 1953. So we realize that what US wanted a liberal policy, right? liberal policy. For that, westernization was important. So he started westernizing Iran to a very great extent, 1953 onwards, where modern education system, professors of English, professor of various languages came, professors from United States came, various universities were opened, school education in English, college education in English came, Western wear, clothing, culture, even concept of, let us say, hotels based on modern systems came up. So it was somewhat very similar to what the United States was. If you go to Iran of 1953, very modernized. Even there were discotheques and everything was there. So now this perceived from the fundamentalist aspect was against the Islamic principles. So now what happened? The Shah's regime involved changes with the Muslim tradition and ideologies which many citizens reacted strongly. Because the traditional ideologies involved banning of alcohol, banning tobacco, banning movies, gambling, foreign dresses, and veil of the women. Now, all these things were basically allowed. Alcohol was allowed, tobacco was allowed, movies were there, Western movies, foreign dresses, all what type of dresses the women could wear, they could wear. And there was no compulsion of wearing a hijab or a veil. So now the fundamentalists thought that this is against the Islamic principles. So what happened then? Again, please understand, how was it a proxy war? Please remember, one of the major reasons of the start of the Iranian revolution, not only these factors, but also was the civic, which was a secret police, which basically used to pick up people and kill people because if they were speaking against even the Iranian ruler. So what happened, that basically from a background at a ground level had a lot of development of animosity against the Iranian king, along with the westernization that people were, if we say not all, but large number of people who were, let us say, religious from their point of view, were against the Shah. Now what happened? Where America stands in the war. Now what happened? When this thing started escalating, we realized that people started protesting at a large scale when it came to 1978. People were already very angry with Shah because of the modernization that was taking place, and a lot of conflicts were there. Now in 1978, Shah turned to United States for help and support. Iran had been pro-America for quite a while. Iran was important to America due to the history together and Iran's location, right? Therefore, the US National Security Advisor, Zbigniew Brzezinski, basically repeatedly told Shah that the US would support him 100%. It was no surprise. So Shah knew that US is going to be there under any circumstance. I don't need to worry. He basically perceived that this revolution is going to end, and if not, we will be using the force of the United States and we can end it. That was a misconception that basically Shah had in his mind. However, after the US thought about some more, they realized that the revolution was virtually unstoppable because it basically increased to such an extent that even the United States thought that now, even if we send the army there, though they sent certain troops, please remember, United States did send certain troops, but it was beyond the imagination. Such large number of people were there involved. They could not simply kill those people. That again would raise a humanitarian concern. So what happened? We basically see at that time United States also taking 2 steps back. Now please, what happened? Iran and America's bond broken. What happened during that time is when the people knew that Iran or the Shah is there because of the US support. So they thought that let us attack the US embassy over there. And that was the basic problem that happened. See, US hostage crisis in November 1979, Iranian revolutionaries seized the US embassy in Tehran and took employees for hostage for captive for 440 days. This event is significant because it changed the way America viewed Iran. Now, this was a time because again Shah had to leave. Now we realize that what was remaining was in the Iran in the hands of the radical or the fundamentals. What happened? Iran's relations with United States, that was a point it deteriorated completely. Because the captives who were held were citizens of the United States. Yeah. So this was a point where the problem had it. Now let us see the timeline. 1941, Mohammad Reza Pahlavi basically replaces his father. 1961, Hussein Bujadri, basically a religious leader, dies and Khomeini takes over as the religious head. In 1963, Shah proposes White Revolution. This was a 6-point reforms bill to put a nation-wide vote. However, Khomeini demonstrates a Shah plan and Shah exits. Basically, he wanted to reform the society through a modern parameters. But again, at that time, again, Khomeini as a religious leader was rising and Shah as a political leader who was there, who was ruling. There was again conflict arising between both of them because Khomeini saw Shah as a person who was going against the Islamic principles. And Shah saw Khomeini that was trying to bring radical Islam there. This was their point of view. So there was conflict already there. In 1961, Khomeini exiled to Tehran and doesn't return in Iran for 14 years. So he was basically exiled. Khomeini because of his, let us say, radical activities, which Shah perceived as was radical. So he was exiled. So what happened? In 1978 January, Hassan Ali Mansour, the Prime Minister of Iran, is assassinated, and Amir Abbas basically took takeovers. In 1978 January, a newspaper called Black and Red Imperialism, which basically wrote wrong statements about Khomeini and very ill about that. Now what happened is demonstration of 4,000 people basically started, and that because of the article that was mentioned, that was a government sponsored article against Khomeini that basically branded him from very bad terms. So what happened? People came in protest outside in Iran. Now Shah used his force and thousands of people were killed during that time. Now what happened? Another protest started around and hundreds of people were killed. Now what is happening is Shah is basically resorting to mass killing of the people who are protesting against them. Now this another demonstration, various people killed, more protesters were killed, and similarly we happen a lot of killings taking place by the ruler. What is going on then? 1978 August, we realized that the Prime Minister basically had made Shah's policy. That means changes are made to Shah's policy. That is, no gambling is going to be there. So Prime Minister over there basically made changes, but the rule against the ruler's will. Now what happened? 1978 Black Friday, Shah brings in tanks and military to break up the peaceful demonstration, and 88 people die there. Similarly, 1979 January 16, Shah realizes that it is not possible to control the revolution now because such large people are there, already thousands have been killed. Now it is time for him, he'll also die in that case. He basically leaves the country. And in December 2nd, 1971, the new constitution of Iran is approved by 98% vote. And we realize what Iran is now is a continuation of this. So this was about the Iranian revolution. I hope you understood it well. Let's move ahead. Prelims topics. Again, we have topic number 1, GS3, page 3, a word KRail is mentioned. Please understand, it can be asked from the perspective, that is why Kerala Rail Development Corporation is known as KRail. Kerala Railway Development Corporation Limited is a joint venture organization by the government of Kerala and the Ministry of Railways. It is known as KRail, which undertakes railway projects from the inception to the operation, with include preparation, submission of detailed project reports. So it is basically a collaboration between Ministry of Railway and the government of Kerala to development of railway projects in Kerala. Now please understand, mission to complete the projects in the country which are high standard of safety, comfort, value addition, efficiency, adopting technologies, optimal utilization of the resources. Vision to a leading organization in the field of development, redevelopment, operation maintenance, passenger amenities, and international standards. Sorry. Now please understand why it is important is this article basically aims at developing the railway connectivity across the coastal regions of Kerala so that it will increase the tourism also and economic activities. One of the projects over here is Silver Line. Basically, it is a 530 kilometers project where the time would be reduced from 12 to 11 hours to simply close to, let us say, 4 hours. This is a 530 kilometers linking the coastal region of Kerala. Now, this is a Silver Line project, right? This is known as Silver Line. Basically linking Trivandrum to Kasaragod by the semi-high speed. So this is what is being discussed right now, to which if this is built, again, there are pros and cons, environmental degradation possibilities there. But again, Kerala government is also coordinating with the Ministry of Railways so that when this project is built, it will basically help in the economic development of the region. Along with it, the tourism activities will increase. So this is again important from that perspective. Next, first scientist result from Aditya L1. Sun mission is out. GS3, page 6. For us is important, what is Aditya L1? Aditya L1 is India's first space mission to observe sun and the solar corona. Meaning of Aditya is sun god, right? It is placed in the halo orbit in the first Lagrange's point L1. There are certain jargons coming here. What is corona? What is Lagrange's point? We'll study that, don't worry. It is placed in the halo orbit or the first Lagrange's point of the Sun-Earth system, which allows to look for the sun continuously. It was launched by a PSLV C-57. Please understand, Sun's corona is the outermost layer of the sun. That should be understood very well. Clear? Now, whatever jargons are mentioned here, I mentioned the explanation over here. Clear? Now, Aditya mission is basically aims to observe the sun and see outer sphere, how those emissions are basically taking place, right? Now, see, study the solar upper atmosphere, the chromosphere and the coronal heating, study the ionized plasma, coronal mass ejection, solar flares. It observes in situ particle environment, providing data to study the dynamics of the sun, physics of solar corona and heating, coronal loop plasma. All these things are basically being studied. There are also studies what are the events taking place on the sun through, let us say, solar mass ejection that are taking place, what are the possible reasons, what is the frequency, and the various parameters and differences over there. When we see over here, we realize that solar corona is the outermost layer. Chromosphere again is a layer of gas above the photosphere with the temperature ranging from 6,000 to 20,000 degrees. CME that is mentioned over here is a large eruption of magnetized plasma. Solar flares are intensely burst of radiations coming out as a release of magnetic energy associated with sunspots. Plasma is basically your ionized gases that are there at very great temperature that basically ionization on the gases take place. So these are certain aspects for the prelims perspective. Now comes the Lagrange's point. Please understand it is placed at L1. That is why it is known as L1. There are various points L1, L2, L3, L4, L5. What do you mean by Lagrange's point? Please understand. There are 5 Lagrange's point. These are positioned with the gravitational pull of the celestial bodies equal to centripetal force. So that means what happens is the pull and push factors basically counter each other. So these basically ease the movement of the body without energy being spent extra. We realize that, see, there will be certain pull from the earth, there will be certain pull from the sun. Now, if this point is there where the basically what is happens, the attraction from both the bodies are cancelled. So it can very easily stay at this point without any, let us say, engine being burst in order to maintain the position. So you don't have to maintain because it is a neutral point where the gravitational pulls of the earth and the sun are basically being cancelled. So it can remain at that point without any energy being spent to remain in that orbit. Those are known as a Lagrange's point, right? There are 5 over here. It is being placed at L1. That is why Aditya L1. Let's move ahead. Kerala Mool's Maritime Education Hub. Topic GS3, page 13, GS2 and 3. Please understand, it is brought by the Maritime Board of Kerala. It is from the official report. Now, please see, Kerala Maritime Board, a statutory board of Government of India, has brought an expression of interest. What happens is that Government of Kerala is planning to develop a maritime institute that is under the Kerala Maritime Board, which would be a hub of maritime education in southern India. So that means it is basically trying to aim at expanding the aspect of maritime education in this particular region, where we see they want to fulfill the aim of Amrit Kal of 2047, where India wants to be a developed country. Now, this region will help because we know that with time, the port facilities will develop, the trade relations will develop. So what is the need? The need is that with time, we'll see the demand or import export will increase. So we need more people getting literate, more infrastructure being built with respect to the maritime education being spread imparted in the region. So Kerala wants to be hub of that. So we realize that Kerala's port serves as a vital gateway to the international trade, handling diverse range of cargo including. So we realize that Kerala is a very appropriate place for creating it as a hub for the maritime education. As India wants to be, let us say, a developed nation by 2047. So maritime education, an institute being set up there can be a very important dimension towards that. So we realize that 6 pillars are being focused. Let us say startup of the maritime sector. Then you have the improved faculty base, innovation labs, centers for excellence, research and training institutes are going to be there. So it's a cluster of large institutes, research and development facilities being there. People from India and across the world will come here to study. So it is again treated as a hub for maritime education. Now, location, please understand, it is in Neendakara region in Kerala. It is a location is advantageous because now this is the region which is close to, let us say, the African region and obviously a center of trade and commerce. So it will attract even the people from the various countries, along with it a suitable place for the education facility, because that will basically increase economic activities of Kerala itself. So that is a location advantage over here. Next comes the first Asian Buddhist summit in New Delhi from tomorrow. GS1, page 6. I have downloaded from the official document of Government of India. Please remember Asian Buddhist Summit to be held in New Delhi from November 5 and 6. President will be the chief guest. Ministry of Culture have basically come up with a theme of role of Buddha Dharma in strengthening Asia. Because please understand, for the prelims and the mains perspective, this question is important. They can ask you role of Buddha in the relations, building relations between Asian countries, or role of Buddhism with respect to trade and commerce. These can be asked because this was in the news. So the theme of the summit is role of Buddha Dhamma in strengthening Asia. You can be asked what is Dhamma for that matter also. Please understand, the Ministry of Culture, Government of India, in collaboration with the International Buddhist Confederation, is organizing the first Asian Buddhist Summit on 5th and 6th of November. The New Delhi, role of Buddha Dharma in strengthening Asia. The Honorable President is going to be the chief guest over here. We realize that it brings together the Sangha leaders, scholars, experts, practitioners from the various Buddhist tradition in order to discuss and foster this spirit and what Buddha has basically taught throughout his life. Now, the teachings of Buddha, his disciples and preachers have kept united. So all those dimensions will be discussed in this. Now, please remember, there are certain themes which have to be focused on. Buddha art, architecture, heritage, Buddha Charika and dissemination of Buddha Dhamma, role of Buddhist relics and relevance in the society, significance of Buddha Dharma in scientific research, and role of Buddhist literature. All these topics are again important for your mains. As the discussion will take place, I'll take out the data from that and present you in the form of the news analysis. So all these things are there. Let's move ahead. Again, remember, it is like a Dhamma Setu. Buddhism is like a Dhamma Setu. Why? It is linking India to the various parts of the world. That is why this question can be important. Okay, next. World Cities Report, Cities Day, page 10, GS 123. We realize that World Cities Day is there. It is celebrated by United Nations on 31st October. Please remember, it was started from 2014, first time with the theme of leading urban transformation. The venue was in China, Shanghai. 2024, the theme is Young Youth Leading Climate Change, Climate and Local Action for Cities. The venue is Egypt, Alexandria. So this is something that is celebrated by the United Nations. Please see, again, the theme is Youth Leading Climate and Local Action for Cities, because we know that 70% of the world will be in the urban areas by 2050. So important dimension is that people should have a sustainable urbanization where youth should play a very important role with respect to the climate change activities. As we move ahead, there is again similar thing what I've told you. It was launched, it is basically under UN Habitat, launched in 2014, and along with it, under basically what happened is United Nations General Assembly designated 31st October as a World Cities Day by the resolution 68-238. This is not required. Day is expected to greatly promote international community's interest in urbanization, a push towards cooperation, and how you can have a sustainable urban development where people can play a very important role and cooperation can be there, so that what happens is that we can have a balanced urbanization, not something that goes against the aspect of a sustainable future. That is why 31st October is declared as a World Cities Day. Now let's see the MCQs. Question number 1, question number 2, question number 3, question number 4, question number 5, and these are your answers. This is the QR code through which you can basically get all the PDF, and this is my name and my email ID. Hopefully you enjoyed the analysis. Let's meet tomorrow and continue with the analysis. Take care, and as you all say at the end, Jai Hind.